Good morning, and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. I'll also apologize. I had a computer problem, and my recording of today's episode didn't take, so I'm trying again. The Jewish day begins and ends at sundown. So a Sabbath for Jews begins on what we would call Friday evening and ends on Saturday evening. As we continue moving through one day in the life of Jesus, we come to something of a conundrum. You see, our days go from midnight to midnight, but for Jesus and his followers, sundown meant another day. That's significant as we continue making our way through part of the first chapter in the Gospel of Mark and talk about what happened with and around Jesus on that one day. The day we have been considering was a Sabbath day, and there were rules about what you could and couldn't do on the Sabbath day. One of those rules forbade walking over a certain distance. However, when sundown came, it was the next day, not the Sabbath, and so all those rules went away. And so it is that Mark tells us. That evening at sunset, they brought to him all who were sick or possessed by demons, and the whole city was gathered around the door. And he cured many who were sick with various diseases and cast out many demons, and he would not permit the demons to speak because they knew him. It's clear that word about Jesus had spread. The crowds certainly knew about how he had cast out the demon from the man in the synagogue, and perhaps they even knew about Peter's mother-in-law. What they knew is that someone amazing, who could do amazing things, was in their midst, and they wanted part of it. I think that's easy to understand. If you are sick, you might grasp at any cure that comes along, and that's just what they did. I doubt at this point that they had any idea who Jesus really was or what his coming among them meant. What they did know was that in him there was a chance to be healed, to be made whole. That's a salvation all its own. Brokenness mended. Those with no hope given new life. Those who cry out for mercy and help are given compassion and mercy. No wonder they flocked to Jesus as soon as the Sabbath ended. God was in their midst. There's another aspect of this little, often overlooked passage as well. As Jesus healed and cast out demons, he didn't permit the demons to speak because they knew him. In other words, they knew he was the Son of God, and he prevented them from telling it. For many, this is a confusing part of the gospel, and it happens over and over as Jesus tells people to keep quiet about who he is. We wonder why Jesus didn't want people to know who he was. Well, it's called the Messianic secret, that Jesus didn't want people to know he was the Messiah, and most scholars think that it was because people had all sorts of expectations for who the Messiah was going to be and what the Messiah was going to do. If people began to talk about Jesus as the Messiah, then he would be saddled with all those expectations that Jesus did not come to fulfill. Rather, Jesus wanted to provide the meaning to the title, and he did so on the cross. The Messiah wasn't a conquering hero ready to throw out the Romans and set up Israel in power and glory. No, the Messiah came to suffer and die. The Messiah came to save. At the very end of the Gospel of Mark, as Jesus hangs dead on the cross, a Roman centurion says, "Truly, this man was God's Son." It is the only time in the Gospel of Mark when Jesus is described as God's Son, when it isn't hushed up. There, Jesus has shown what it means to be God's Son. Jesus has shown the depth of God's love. It's not a secret now. Sunrise, sunset, anytime, search for Jesus. Sunrise, sunset, anytime, tell it. Thanks for watching, and remember to let this day belong to God.